Hello, it's me again, Dayan. Today I'm going to share with you my understanding about the procedures or the things that we need to consider in critiquing a poetry. So I am going to relate those steps to a certain example like Antarctica by Derek Mahon so that we can easily understand the concept. I am just going outside and maybe some time. The others snood, pretending not to know. At the heart of the ridiculous, the sublime. He leaves them reading and begins to climb. Goading his ghost into a howling snow. He's just going outside and maybe some time. The tent recedes beneath its crust of rhyme, and frostbite is replaced by vertigo. At the heart of the ridiculous, the sublime. Need we consider it some sort of crime? This numb self sacrifice of the weakest. No, he's just going outside and maybe sometime. In fact, forever, solitary enzyme. Though the night yelled no glimmer, there will glow, at the heart of the ridiculous, the sublime. He takes leave of the earthly pantomime, quietly knowing it is time to go. I am just going outside and maybe sometime, at the heart of the ridiculous, the sublime. So based on my understanding about this poem, it is all about a sacrifice of a certain person, a sacrifice to explore, and it ends up in a sad or tragic expedition. So first, in critiquing a poem, we have to consider first what happened in the poem. So what is it all about? Just like in the example that we have, it is a tragic poem in which there's a person who really wanted to commit himself to explore, to maybe he wanted to examine things around in Antarctica. He wanted to study, and because of that eagerness, he ended up dying because of the temperature of the place, which is Antarctica. Next is, where does the poem take place? If there's no definite setting, that's important to notice. So in our example, obviously it's in the Antarctica where someone has to sacrifice. No, it's so cold in there, no one is going to survive. So number three, who is speaking in the poem? So the poet uses second person point of view because he used he to describe the character in the poem. And number four question is the writing clear? If not, is there an expressive reason for the confusion? So from the example that we have, of course, although the poet uses some unfamiliar words, but it is understandable that the writing is clear because we able to understand the theme or the meaning of the poem. Next, are there enough images? Are those images fresh and vivid? Are there enough specific details? So in the poem, we easily understand that it is in the place where it is so cold. It was clearly described in the poem because it is obvious also in the title itself. Next, are the rhythms expressive and appropriate to the subject? Yes, the rhythm is expressive and appropriate to the subject based on the example that we have, because we can easily utter if we are going to read aloud the poem. And while reading it, of course, I did a test or an exercise of reading the poem, and it feels like my heart is racing. I feel the tension, the feeling of the poet in writing his poem. Number 7, do the sounds like consonants and vowels, rhymes, assonance, and alliteration, if any, sound interesting and effective? Are they easy to say, or tongue twisters, pleasant or discordant? So I could say that the poem, while reading it aloud, it is easy to pronounce, and there's what we call the assonance of the assonance. We can distinguish I, E, O, E in the in each lines. So next, are there repeated words, phrases, or lines in the poem? Are those repetitions effective or redundant? So, in the example that we have, yes, there are repeated words such as sometime. Although those words are repeated, it is not. It is effective because it reminds you of the feeling that the character in the poem is sublime for what he is doing or the decisions he made along with the poem. Next is the poem written in meter, free verse, nation? Is it done so effectively? How could the line breaks on or meter be improved? How could the sentences be improved? So when we say meter, It is a basic rhythmic structure of a verse or lines in a verse. Many traditional verse forms prescribe a specific verse meter or a certain set of meters. Next is the poem written in any particular pattern or form such as sonnet, sestina, or villanelle. So as we all know, there are different types of poem, and each types have their own forms or styles. And in critiquing a poem, we have to understand also the forms the, that the poet used in his writing. Next is the poem marred by any of these flaws, like poeticized language, flowery or inflated expressions? So in our example, I guess there's no flowery or inflated expressions there. It is just simple yet have a quality impact to the reader. Sentimentally greeting card or effusions. Dull, prosaic, explanatory phrases. So there's no explanatory phrases in our example. The words that are being used are exact, and there's in each line there's an appropriate number of words being used. There's no longer lines. Next, generality and or too many abstractions, bombast, rhetorical or overkill, cliches, stereotypes, hackneyed language, then metaphors, shift in verb, tense or in singular plural nouns or pronouns, error in grammar, spelling, syntax, capitalization, use of apostrophes, inexact or incorrect word choices. So I guess some of these things that we have to consider are related also to grammar. But in the example that we have, some words are, it is not wordy, and the idea being presented is too direct. That is why it doesn't use a lot of words, and we cannot say there's an exact or incorrect word choices. Next is, does the poem begin in the right spot? Should it begin later? Should something be inserted before the current beginning? So the example that we have, since the poem is too short, then it automatically jump into the idea that there's a person who did such thing, and what are the consequences happened because of his decision. It's not that broad yet. Next is, does the reader need any information that is not given? So the example that we had, I think since it is too short, but the idea is already in there, and there's no further question. Yeah, but the thing is, the reader should know the reasons why that the person or the character in the poem did such decision. Next is, does the poem move well from the line to line, from stanza to stanza? Should the order be changed? Should there be different line breaks, stanza breaks? So from the example that we have, there's only one stanza, so there must be stanza breaks. The thing is, in our example, everything is done. The description of the situation, the poem, the theme, everything is presented already in one stanza. Another thing to consider is, does the poem end effectively in the right spot with the right language? Should it end sooner? Should it continue? From the example is, it automatically said that the character received the consequences, although it is short, but the idea, the consequences of the decision. Next is, does the poem end effectively in the right spot with the right language? Should it end sooner? Should it continue? Next is, if the poem seems neat and orderly, should it be wilder? If the poem seems wild, should it be more controlled? So there's a lot of questions that we need to consider in critiquing. But based on the example that we had, since it is just a very short poem, but I can say that the idea is already in there. Next is, what do you like in the poem? What problems do you see? What suggestions can you give in the poem? So since we are criticizing poetry here, we need to understand that we need to locate or understand the problem we encounter while reading the poem, and we have to list down some suggestions to the poet. What questions would you like to ask the poet? What confuses you? What don't you understand? So this is like in the last part of criticizing a poetry. It is like a time where the reader have to reflect about the problem, their understanding, and the things they want to suggest, the things they want to change, because that is what criticizing is for. In that way, the reader or the reader can respond. So criticizing, we have to understand the poem, and in that way we can respond to the poem.